Day 2 on Pit Row. Steve Ronquist, Charlie Turner with you live from the original Gino's Pizza and Grill. And, of course, thank you there as well to Regan Smith, who darn near had the pole. He was almost going to have the pole. And it's really the cool thing about that is he's talking about being in the Bud shootout or the Coors shootout or whatever it's going to be. They're going back to the guys that are the pole winners, and that's the way that should be.
Yeah, got to qualify in a pole. Yeah, I agree. I was glad to see that. Now, if one guy wins all the poles, it'll be a real boring race.
Yes, it will. But I'm sure they'll find a bunch of provisionals to throw in there as well. But we're very happy to have on the phone line with us. Eric McClung joins us. And, Eric, Charlie and I need a lot of help with our fantasy picks, so you're the guy this week.
Very good. Well, always pleased to serve.
Anytime we can put the pressure on you, Eric. Okay, we're going to Las Vegas. We came out of Phoenix, one of those predictable tracks probably where you probably did really, really well because everybody that does well at Phoenix always does well at Phoenix, that kind of thing. Now we're going to Las Vegas to one of the so-called cookie-cutter tracks, but this is one of the fast four, I call them. Tell us what you think your preview would be for Las Vegas and tell us what you think.
Well, it is a little. What I'm interested to see this week is, we talk a lot about the Yahoo game in the B list. I think there's a lot of opportunities there with some drivers that that can go a lot of different ways. The top tier drivers, the A drivers, it's pretty much the usual suspects, like you mentioned. Jimmie Johnson's been very good at Las Vegas. Carl Edwards won here last year. All for over the course of the history of the track, Jeff Gordon's numbers are phenomenal as well. I think one guy that I'm really interested to see what happens with him is Jeff Burton. Since 2006, when this track was redesigned, he actually, although he hasn't won in that time in Las Vegas, he does have the best average finish at that track at 10.5. And these past couple seasons, he's really been all over the place. He was pretty much a non-factor for most of last year. But, this is a new season, and they did downsize the operation there. So be interested to see, what really happens with Burton. If he runs well here, he, may become a more relevant guy.
And I think historically Burton's been pretty good at this kind of track. I don't have the stats in front of me. You probably do. But it seems to me he has kind of the same kind of record down at Texas, which to me is a similar racetrack to Vegas. I think pretty good history down there. I know he won some races early in that track's history. I don't know about so much the last few years, but
what about natives of Las Vegas, specifically Kurt on his reclamation tour? What do you think? Does Kurt have a chance in that number 51 car from Phoenix?
I really don't. I really don't plan on using Kurt Busch until I see a good performance, from beginning to end. I know he had some moments there at Phoenix, which seemed more of like a pit strategy kind of deal. But in terms of starting him in the fantasy format, I'm very hesitant to do that. Although his brother Kyle Busch has been very good in terms of qualifying. He has the best average starting position since that track was repaved, including 2 poles. So if you're in the Yahoo game, maybe you don't want to go with Kyle Busch as your A-list driver, but I think if you lock into a Jeff Gordon, Jimmie Johnson, Carl Edwards, I think those are the big 3. I think the guy you want to put on your bench, try to get some of those qualifying bonus points, would be Kyle Busch, just because of that outstanding history with poles and whatnot.
Any concern from your end on the early performance of the Hendrick Motorsports guys? Would you stay away from Johnson or Gordon until you see a similar thing that you're looking for from Kurt Busch, for example, before you ride them? I mean, I like what personally I like what the Roush guys have done early this year. I think Carl Edwards looks like the pick to me this weekend.
Carl Edwards would probably be the guy that I end up going with on the A list. I'm only staying away from Jimmie Johnson because I used him last week at Phoenix, and I don't want to use him up this quickly early on.
Right.
I really wouldn't be hesitant at all, though, if you want to go, maybe you used Carl Edwards last week, if you want to go with Jeff Gordon. And in terms of driver rating, he's got the best among all drivers at Las Vegas. So, there have been, I think the early struggles are maybe a little bit too, maybe mean a little too much. Daytona is kind of a wild card race anyway. Jimmie Johnson overcame quite a bit at Phoenix to get the finish that he did, and early on really looked like he was going to run away with it. So I'm not really, not pressing the panic button on Hendrick guys by any means. But another guy, going back to the B list that I mentioned a little bit, and a guy who's been kind of under the radar because he's got 2 top 10s in both the races so far is Joey Logano. Average running position, coincidentally, in last 2 Las Vegas races for him has also been 10th. So, I think the big guys, I think you can pretty much pencil those guys in right away. But it's those B-list guys that I think you're really going to make a lot of moves with this week.
Eric, is there an A-list guy to definitely stay away from 100%?
Well, other than the 4 guys that I mentioned, I think you're kind of taking some chances. Denny Hamlin's been pretty good here. Some of the other A-list guys have pretty decent resumes. Brad Keselowski, I don't really like him as an A-list driver in the Yahoo game. The overall body work really isn't there yet, and I think week to week it's going to be hard to put him ahead of some of these much bigger names, much bigger guys. So I can't really see using Brad Keselowski very much at all in the Yahoo game.
All right. He is Eric McClung. You can follow him on Twitter at Eric McClung and read his commentary at kffl.com. Well, of course, you can catch Eric's fantasy racing tips here pretty much every couple weeks. Eric, we appreciate your time again this week. If you had to make a one-and-done pick this week, I'm assuming you'd taken Carl Edwards.
I would maybe save Edwards for a little bit. I would want to see what happens with practice and whatnot. I mentioned Jeff Burton a little bit earlier. If he's good in practice, he would be a good kind of one-and-done pick.
There you go.
Another kind of wild card guy I think you could throw out there is Marcus Ambrose. Career best 4th place finish at Las Vegas last year. Qualified on the outside pole as well. And really, if you look at the box scores, his finishes this season really have not been indicative of how good he's been. So I think he's kind of one of those under-the-radar guys as well.
Yeah, he was the one that kind of was I was thinking about too. So Steve has something to run by you before we let you go.
All right, we got about a minute here, Eric. We got the play-in game on the 64 greatest drivers for that last 64th spot, pitting Danica Patrick against Louise Smith. Who do you like?
Well, I listened to your earlier guest, and I don't have any relation with Danica. I haven't met her or talked to her or anything. I think you have to go with Smith, just with kind of what all she's meant to the history of the sport. Danica's really just kind of, in the middle of her career, although she's had some impressive runs in the Indy 500 and whatnot. But I think Smith overall has a much bigger place in history of the sport, at least so far.
All right. Thanks for that, Eric. We'll talk to you in a couple of weeks.
All right. Sounds good.
All right.
Eric McClung.